Roaring Twenties podcast. Today we have on with us Bailey Peyton. You guys know her as the Bailey P. She is an LA-based curve model and content creator. Her energy is already incredible. We're so excited to have her. Hey Bailey, welcome to the show.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
God. It's going to be so much fun. We have so many questions. We're going to be talking about all the good stuff, self-love, relationships, confidence, all that amazing stuff. The stuff we all need to hear right now, honestly.
Every single one of us.
Every single day. I can never get enough of it. So Bailey, go ahead, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, who you are, where you're from, and how old you are.
Absolutely. So as that lovely lady said, my name is Bailey Peyton. I'm originally from Denver, Colorado. I now live in Los Angeles. I've been here with my husband for about the last 4 years. We moved here in the fall of 2016. As you mentioned, I'm a curve model and content creator, which is wild and something that I'm still navigating on a daily basis. I actually spent most of my career in musical theater. I still love to sing, act, and dance. And I often say that I think a lot of what I did in theater and as a performer actually kind of led me to where I am now. I take a lot of that into what I do as both a curve model and content creator. I've only been in modeling about 2 years, so it's still kind of new to me, but something that I always not necessarily aspired to. I never really pictured myself to be doing what I'm doing today, which is always really interesting to look back on. But I did always hope that I'd be able to be in a position to, be somewhat of a role model and be the woman that I needed when I was younger. And so that's kind of my favorite thing about what I'm able to do now, both in the modeling and creator platform, is be an example for young women and really be that voice that I needed to hear when I was a young girl. So I left Colorado essentially to kind of strive for all the creative things out here in LA, and we're just out here doing it.
Yes,
I love that so much. Oh my goodness. It's so crazy because you touched on so many things. Now my brain is like this direction, this direction, this direction.
I know. I'm like that. Like
no, it's but first off, I just wanted to say I really feel if you guys don't follow Bailey yet, her energy is so magnetic. I remember I came across your page when starting to honestly be on my own like confidence journey, and just reading all of the things that you had to say, feeling your energy, it just inspired me so much to really start living more authentically, and that's something we talk about a lot here. So you talked a little bit about your journey and how you started in musical theater. We've totally had experiences in musical theater and have a lot of friends, especially one of our friends loves you so much, and she's pursuing musical theater right now and really looks up to you for all those reasons. But what did you take out of musical theater specifically that you feel impacted where you are today, just for those that want to know? And then how did you actually transition into modeling?
Absolutely. So as far as what I took with me, I think actually, let me start the other way around because I think it'll make more sense. So when we came to LA, I was actually looking to pursue music. I kind of wanted to step away a little more from like the musical theater side and maybe like dabble in some songwriting, kind of just do more vocalist type of work. I'm going to make a very long story short, but we had a series of events happen when we moved out here, including a pretty awful car accident that put me out of the work that I had intentionally planned for out here. I ended up being out of work for like over a year. And so that was the moment I literally learned, like, you can iron out all the plans in the world and life is so unexpected that it's going to throw these curveballs at you. And so Sam and I, my husband, were actually just still dating at the time. And like, he had to take on, some massive responsibilities. We, of course, knew we had a future together because we were moving to a different state, but, we hadn't been engaged or any of those things yet. So it brought on a lot of challenges, not only for our relationship, but also for my career, given that we are moving out here primarily for that.
Yeah.
So it ended up that I was out of work for quite some time. And then, like I talk about a lot on my social, I've always been curvy and I've always, struggled with like the stigma around weight, but sorry, I got like emotional thinking about this for a second.
No, yeah.
So but after my injuries, I gained a pretty significant amount of weight in like that first year and a half living in LA. And one of the things we looked forward to the most actually about being out here was like being active and how nice the weather is year round and all these things. And so it was pretty devastating for me not to be able to do any of the things that I had planned for. So I gained a lot of weight and I felt really sorry for myself for a solid 2 years. And then I remember sitting in our old place and thinking to myself, like, how much longer can you sit here and just blame the rest of the world and everything that happened for where you're at today? And so I started looking into plus size modeling, and I was like, people always told me I had a pretty face, but there weren't plus models back in the day. And so like maybe this is some weird sign that that's like what I'm meant to be doing. So I just started submitting to agencies and I got signed like a couple weeks later. And so that's how I fell into modeling, ironically.
I literally can't believe that.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, like I've hustled like crazy since then, but had I never taken that chance of just being like, oh, I'll throw my hat in the ring. And like, I literally took digitals, which are basically these basic modeling photos that you submit to agencies on my iPhone out on like in front of a brick wall or something random. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, let's just shoot my shot and see what happens. So that's how I kind of got into it. But then I found that a lot of what I do in castings and all of these things really falls back to a lot of what the reason I loved theater, which was because I'm such a people person and I love, I always told my mom, no matter what I end up doing, as long as I can get in the room, I know that I can always prove myself because I always lead with my personality. And my husband, even now to this day, says, he's like, we found a way to essentially turn your personality into work, into what you do. And I've always just loved that because I think, being a presence and like being a part of something like musical theater, if you are a person who's like meant to be in that industry, I hope this makes sense the way I'm wording it, but like theater especially, it's because you are like your own storyteller and you're so open to sharing your own story. At least for me, like I was never necessarily like needing to act certain things because it was just like a piece of my story that I would pull from. I would pull from pieces of my life that were either like really incredible or pieces of my love life that were heart-wrenching, and I would turn that into whatever I was performing. Specifically when I played like Tracy in Hairspray, that had a lot to do with body image struggles and all these things. So I think that's something that's really just amazing about performers, and something that I love to see when I see live theater. It's just like the passion that comes out of someone who tells their own story through a different story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what the piece of your story where you were like, I was feeling really sorry for myself, and then I was like, well, maybe this is something for me, and so I submitted to these agencies. And like, I think that is such a great piece of your story for people to hear, because we know so many people who feel stuck in their life, whether it's about weight, whether it's about where they are in a relationship or in a career. Like, it's so easy to feel stuck and then feel sorry for yourself. But realizing, and we always talk about this, like things happening for you instead of to you, and taking that leap, like we're always like, just do something. Like, it might not be the right thing, but as long as you do something, it has to be better than just sitting and feeling sorry for yourself. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious as to like, what was like the trigger? What was the push where you're like, I can't sit here and feel sorry for myself anymore. Like, I'm going to do this thing.
Sure. So my husband is a pilot, and he had gone back to work, several months or whatever it was after our accident. And I remember having all of these little like minute moments where I got frustrated because like he continued to be able to go have this purpose, even if it was like flying, like his actual job, or even things as little as like going to the gym. Like, that frustrated me because I couldn't do them. And that was so unlike who I am. Like, that was literally so unparalleled. And one of the injuries I did end up with was like a head injury. And so that was something mentally that like I was fighting was, okay, why is it making me upset that someone that I love, the person I love most in the world, can go do these things, and yet I am like, almost like jealous of that. Like that was just so far from anything I had ever felt or who I was, that I was just really struggling with that. And so I remember I think it was a lot of like minute moments that built up to that ultimate moment. Cause I remember Sam was on a trip and I was just thinking to myself, I've spent all of these great years in my 20s, my early 20s, like these are what I would have considered like my prime years, to go after my career and things. Um, sitting around and like he's off flying trips and I'm just like, okay, well, I'm going to sit here and continue to feel like the world let me down. And I remember thinking about kind of what I mentioned earlier about all of these people telling me when I was growing up, like, you have such a beautiful face, but it was never like, oh, you should maybe look into modeling because of my body, because obviously everyone knew that I didn't have a body to be a model, as at least that's what they perceived and that's what I was taught growing up. And so
Untrue.
yeah, right, exactly. So I think it was, all the buildup of just like the memories I had growing up, and then this weird energy I felt about, being envious of what other people, including my like boyfriend, what they were able to do at the time. And I think the buildup of all of that kind of just clicked at one point. And I was like, what can I think it was what can I turn this into? Kind of like what you said, doing something for you. I've been dealt this card. I've been dealt the bad. How am I going to turn it into something good? Because the Bailey that I know and the Bailey I was a year ago, or whatever, whatever period of time that was in my life, she knows better than this. She's stronger than this. And, but when we're in that deep, in a time that's a struggle, it's so hard to reach that point. And I always say there's no like secret sauce magic dust. That's why I like to say it's really like a buildup of moments, because I think that stands for a lot of things and a lot of lessons in my life in particular. Is I don't normally have like aha moments. I have little moments that build up to the big aha moment.
Yeah, that was so beautifully put. And I think a lot of people in their 20s specifically can benefit from hearing that, because like you said before, you're like, you can't really plan anything out. You can have a plan and it can totally not go the way you expect. And I think that's a big piece of your early 20s is people have this idea that their life is going to play out in a certain way and then it doesn't. And they blame themselves and think they're not enough and internalize it and, judge themselves and all the guilt, shame spiral, all of those things. So I think your story is inspiring in so many ways, and that's a big piece of it. And especially how you were able to turn something that felt so shameful to you. I personally have experienced a lot of changes in my own body, and I know that feeling, and I know a lot of people in this world struggle with that. So for you to, kind of to figure out, what am I going to do from here? Of course your feelings are valid. Of course, everything you feel is beyond valid, but to be able to actually push beyond that and acknowledge the validity, but also continue to like keep on keeping on. And I think especially when people struggle really with anything, but we have a tendency to isolate ourselves from the world, and like you said, feel this like jealousy towards what other people are doing, but can't like muster up that energy to make a shift. So if you had to, if someone is in that place, because Julia and I talk about all the time, we're like, dang it, if I just knew what I know now, then, what?
That's why we're doing this show.
Yes,
You're literally preaching to the choir. I say that all the time to my husband, all the time.
So true, because it's like, man, it all makes sense now, but it doesn't make sense in the thick of it. So my question is, for someone that is in the thick of it right now, they don't feel like themselves, they feel stuck, they feel maybe ashamed, guilty, all those feelings that keep us stagnant. What would you say to them? What piece of advice would you give them?
The first thing that comes to my mind is baby steps. I, for the longest time, felt like in order to get it, whether it was getting out of a relationship that was toxic or getting out of the stagnant place where I felt like it was, you know, everything was against me, and no matter what step I took, I was just going to face more challenges. So like, why bother?
Yeah.
I always had this mindset for the longest time, which is exactly why I always say the quote that I like kind of came up with about confidence. So I say confidence is not a one-day journey, it's an everyday choice. And that stands for me for everything, because I always had this mindset that it was always like this destination that I would just like figure it all out one day, and then it'd just be like smooth sailing, like, cool, we've reached it, boom, we're good to go. But if you don't learn how to like have little tools in your toolbox and like take baby steps, then you kind of think you've gotten to this pinnacle in this day and this destination, and then when it gets hard again, it all falls back on you. And so that's what I mean when I say baby steps, is really, you know, when it comes to confidence, I often encourage, you know, trying out like a little bit more of positive self-talk, or like looking yourself in the mirror, and instead of, you know, even if you do see something negative and that's the first thing that comes to your mind, let's try shifting the narrative, and let's try like pointing out the positive instead today. You know, that little baby step might make all the difference for you tomorrow. And so, and I can definitely say that I've been in a couple of these ruts that you're referring to, especially this last year. And quite honestly, today is one of the first days that I really felt like a bit lighter. And I don't know if it's because I just took a couple of days off, or because I'm like, I love to celebrate the new year, but I definitely am like try to stay away from like the resolution like type talk, just because that in the past has gotten me like really negative on feeling like I'm not doing enough, which I'm sure like you both can relate to. And yeah, and but I think that like what's gotten me out of like all of these ruts this year, and it's gonna sound so lame and simply put, but like, is just giving myself grace. Like I've had to really, really learn this past year to be okay with not being where I thought I would be, or, you know, having gained weight in the last 6 months of 2020, or having, you know, lost some of the friendships that I thought were going to last a lifetime, you know, whether like it falls in so many different facets, but I've certainly felt like in so many ruts in this last year. And I think that's something that I really aspire to do every day on my social media, is to like make people feel seen. Like, I don't care if you show up to like see my breakfast or like have a dance party with me. I want you to feel seen and like worthy, and know that I'm here, and know that you have like a best friend in me, regardless of the fact that we've never met, because I think at the end of the day, like we're all just craving connection. And yeah, if you feel like you're stuck right now, come hang out with me, because I got you.
She has you. Yeah. And Bailey, we just want you to know, we were talking about this before you hopped on, like you absolutely do that. So if that's your mission, just know like you do make people feel seen and heard and valued. And that's very much aligned with what we try to do here. So we know friends of ours that DM you and are like, hey, love this that you do. And you just are so intentional and like take time out of your days, your busy, clearly life, to make people know that you have their back. So you're living out your purpose.
That means the world. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah. And like going off that, I know something that you talk about, Bailey, is that like you say your energy introduces you before you do. And I feel like you go to Bailey's page and you get her. Like you go to her page and you get it. Like and it's so off, and it's not fake. It's not put on. It's so authentic. And that's why you go to your page, Bailey, and you feel a connection, because it is so authentic and we just get you. But you know, like I love that notion, and I totally agree. But so often we're like so worried about how we're showing up, whether it's on social media or whether it's in person. And me and Brenda just did a whole podcast on rejection, and we're always thinking about how other people are perceiving us. So what does that mean to you about like your energy introducing you before you do? And how does that allow you to show up in a more authentic version of yourself?
Gosh. So I had so many thoughts spiraling while you were like talking.
Go down all of it.
No, I really appreciate that, because when my brand started growing, it was very much a conversation that Sam and I had very often was like, literally at the pillar of any time we'd like potentially meet with like management to help me out if we were looking into hiring an assistant, which are all things like we've been doing and considering this past year because the growth like got really crazy, and I got to a place where I was like in between feeling like immensely grateful and really overwhelmed.
100%.
Is I would always say to Sam, whatever we do, whether I'm at 10K followers or 500K, my most important top priority, hands down, always is to stay authentic and to connect with people, because that's why I've always started this platform in the first place. So I always told him, I'm like, if you ever, feel like I am not staying true to myself, like you need to sit me down and grab me by the shoulders. And
I love that.
like, because that staying authentic is, and sharing the real, raw, and relatable, as I always say, is like everything I want out of my space. So, and I have to say that it gets harder with growth because of exactly what you just said. You feel like, I'm trying to touch on a phrase that you just, or like that said, that sparked this thought, but feeling like everyone is kind of watching your every move, if that like,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
a weird way to put it, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, you're always kind of showing up in these different ways. And honestly, something I learned this last year is like, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. There are always going to be people who don't like you.
Yeah.
And like, you're just not going to be some people's flavor, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Like you have to be okay with that. But I think that's something that is really great about authenticity, is when you are so true to yourself and you've done so much work on yourself that doesn't even like phase you anymore. That's when you've like done it. Like for me, that's like, okay, like that person showed up and like hid behind a computer screen and made me feel awful, but like I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go on, because I spent like the last 3 years of my life working to be the woman I was today. So like unfazed.
Yeah.
He's but I think that when it comes to just like what I mean personally when I say your energy introduced you before you do, is like leading with kindness. And like I think that when I get asked about confidence a lot, which I think directly relates to this, particular like energy question, is I I think everyone has a different glow when they're confident. Like I've seen it with girls who ask me about it, and that's often what I say. Like people are like, how are you so confident? And I'm like, you have a different glow when you really love yourself. Like you really do. And it's not, I can't like sit here and tell you like, here's the 5 steps I took to confidence, because like yesterday it might have looked awesome. And today I might be like, woof, I really need to work on myself today. But it's going to look different every day. And, but I think the way you show up and the way you present yourself and like how you choose to put your energy out, both to other people, to yourself, and to the rest of the world, is how like that's all a part of how you learn more about yourself. And I always ask myself, what do I like want to be known for? And I want to be known for being kind and being compassionate and talking about important things, and not being afraid to show up like myself, because I spent way too many years doing that, and that's not how I want to spend my time on here anymore.
Totally. Yeah. You're speaking right to our hearts.
Sometimes
and
I'm just like, oh my God, I rambled on like 18 different thoughts.
No,
it was perfect.
Yes. I asked like 4 questions in that. So it was like very fair.
Y'all are very much my speaker.
And kind of going off of that, confidence is one of the things for you, and also being bold. So what does being bold mean to you?
Okay, you asked that at a perfect time, because it like I can bridge right off that statement I just said. Like being bold to me is showing up every day exactly as you are. Like, and that can mean anything from meeting yourself in the mess. That's another phrase that I use a lot. Is some days being bold to me is just like, I slept till 11 because I needed to today. And like, I'm going to show up and tell you about how I'm a total mess today. And that's cool. Whether it's the fact that like, I feel really bad about my body today, or I had a really shitty conversation with a friend, or like, whatever it is, you know, like, I meet myself in the mess, and I'm making a bold choice that day by like admitting that and being vulnerable about that and not being afraid to be open about that, especially when it comes to my community, because, and that goes back to the whole authenticity thing too, is just, I want to show up every day like where I'm at. I'm not ever going to show up and be like, here's my perfect lifestyle at 8 a.m. Like, she's killing it as usual, and then like turn off my phone and be like, wow, today really sucks. Like, you're always gonna get the real with me. And I literally have a neon sign to my right that says be bold.
Love it.
But yeah, it's my way of just reminding myself that like, bold moments don't have to be like, they don't always have to be positive and pretty and happy. They just have to be you. They just have to represent who you are. And like, if you're staying true to yourself and showing up as you are in that moment, then you're making a bold choice. And I actually asked my community a while back to like share a bold moment with me, and some of the responses I got were just, oh, they were so incredibly inspiring, because it was everything from like, I decided to book a therapy session, or I decided to like, you know, start anxiety meds, or I am going to finish college. I wore a crop top for the first time today. So
it can mean anything.
Anything. Yeah. And I remember just reading through them and feeling like so inspired, because it was exactly how I define it. I'm like, this applies to so many different things for so many different people, but all of these people are having, you know, this moment where they realize, okay, this is like what's best for me right now, regardless of anyone else's expectations or opinions or judgments. This is what I'm doing for me right now. And that takes boldness.
Yeah, and how beautiful that it is actually so different for people. I feel like a lot of times we have this idea that like, you know, everybody wants to succeed, and this idea of success has to look the same, or how they feel, or what they do, or how they get there. But like, it is different for everyone, and that is, like you said, being bold in a world that's kind of trying to keep you in a box. Is choosing to step outside of it, or break outside of it. And we always say, you know, if no one else's opinion mattered, what would you be doing differently? And it's a question that like shakes us, because we're like, shoot, I really have to choose.
Because like, when you hear that question and you like actually ask yourself that question, you're like, oh fucking shit, like I'm doing a lot of things better for everybody else.
Yes,
it's so true. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes. And kind of switching gears a little bit. So we talked about all the confidence and boldness and all of the things. And there's just a post that you had honestly a little while back. And we also talk a lot about relationships and dating on this podcast. And you allude to a past relationship in your life. And you said specifically that made you believe that love was slammed doors, angry nights, and promises made out of lies. So many women are misled by the meaning of love based on not knowing any differently. So what does love mean to you today? And what kind of caused you to shift your perspective on what love is?
Well, that last question is easy. My husband, instead. So the relationship I was referring to in that particular post was with my ex. So I now have been married for 2 years to my husband, Sam. But I was previously very young and stupid.
We all are.
We all are.
We all are.
Was previously engaged at like the age of 20. And you know, this is a really, for a long time, I'll admit, I kind of was unsure whether that would ever be something I'd like openly talk about, because once again, it goes back to just like how we're felt to, you know, and almost like programmed to feel shamed because we've made mistakes, or because we've, you know, loved and lost when everyone was trying to warn us. But like, once again, goes back to like, you don't know until you do. And I had to learn that for myself. And
there's some things that you can only learn on your own.
Truth.
There just are.
Everyone in my world could have told me, oh, I was going to go on to do better things, and how this human being that I was with was toxic. But like, I just could not see it. It was like blinders, blinders, blinders.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I meant that very literally when I wrote, like, I thought love was slam doors and angry nights because I was used to someone or my significant other at the time, like walking out on me when things got hard and when there were conversations to be had. And so I just thought, okay, well, you're like coming back after days and telling me you love me. So like that must be love. That's love, is you leaving and slamming doors in my face and getting angry, but then coming back.
Yeah.
And then it took me a while to like get back into dating. And I actually was looking like for nothing serious. And then my husband and I met online, and I had been on like 4 or 5 dates, and he was he was, I believe, my 5th date. And I remember meeting him, and I called my friend, she was the reason like I got back into dating, was because she had met her now husband at the time on this same site. And so it was called OkCupid, by the way. So
go sign up.
Yeah, right. Go, everybody now.
Everybody's running now.
So everyone's like hitting pause. So she actually, I remember like calling her, and I was like, oh, I'm so angry at you right now. And she's like, what? Why? And I like, because I just wanted to casually date, and now I'm not going to be able to let this one go. So like, screw you.
That's what always happens. It comes when you're not looking.
Seriously. And it was that. And I straight up was always like the one who laughed at that. And it's like, it's going to come unexpectedly. And my husband and I both were the ones who were like, okay, when you know, like, nah, whatever. And then we met each other and moved in at 6 months together. And like, we still are that mushy-gushy when you know couple, and will be forever. So like, yes, I get so tongue-tied because now I'm just like,
she's in love.
But yeah, I mean, it's like, to put it frankly, Sam, my husband, like absolutely showed me what real love was. And it was a learning process, because I think also in the same post you're referring to, I talked about how, I think it was the same one, about how he kind of had to, it took time for me to kind of let him in. And that was from an emotional standpoint, from a physical standpoint. Like, I really had to find ways to trust and to open myself up again, to communicate again. And in that type of, when you're getting as personal as falling in love with someone, it's not easy to do when you've been through a relationship like I had. And so the fact that Sam was able to make me feel so safe and secure and loved so quickly was, I think, when I kind of started getting like a little bit stunned, I'm like, wait, is this like what it's supposed to be like kindness and, support and communication? Like, it honestly kind of surprised me at the time. Yeah. Because like I said, that's not what I knew love to be. And it's just amazing to look back on, because quite honestly, like, we have the most beautiful relationship, and I don't even know how to put it into words sometimes. I do my best in all of the posts that you're talking about, but it's just, I mean, Sam does everything in the world to make me happy, and he, we're best friends, and the way he communicates is like, it's just, there are good humans out there, I promise you, but like, you gotta weed through the really shitty ones beforehand. Exhibit.
Speaking of like weeding through the shitty ones, and being alone, I think like a lot of women, especially at the age that we're at, me and Brenda are at it, like around 25, where so many people, you're in the middle.
I never said how old I was at the beginning of this.
Did you not?
I don't think I did. I think when I introduced myself, I'm 27, because I was just gonna ask how old you guys are.
Here we go.
Okay. I'm 25, Brenda's gonna be 25 next month.
Okay.
But we're at this, like, that middle ground where it's like either everyone's single or everyone's engaged. So like, terrible. But also I feel like a lot of people that we know who are in relationships, or that maybe aren't the best, like, are afraid to be alone now because they're like, but I'm 25, like everybody's getting engaged. Like there's so much fear around being alone, especially at this age, I think, where there's such a dichotomy. So how did you cultivate the belief that you were more worthy than your past relationship?
Mm. So I think this is actually something that might surprise some people. I know it surprises people in my community, and hope like potentially will surprise your listeners here. I really don't know that I even understood that until after we were married.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I'm a firm believer in like finding yourself and figuring who you are, figuring out who you are, like, and being really secure in that before you join your life with someone else. But for me, it happened differently, and like that's okay. And I think that's been something that, like, really at the time we got married, like I had a lot of image issues with like myself, my body, like it goes past like just my body image, like, um and I really didn't think I was like worthy of like the big love.
Yeah.
um and I guess the reason I think it's important to share this is to know and understand that like that, because just because I felt that way and because I know I felt that way doesn't mean that I was like that our relationship is any less authentic than it is. It doesn't mean that I was leaning on Sam for the wrong things. It doesn't mean that I wasn't leaning on myself enough. It doesn't mean that I didn't learn the right things. It doesn't mean that the timing for us should have been any different. It simply is how my timing worked out. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way looking back, because the moments where I like really bloomed and we've continued to bloom is, you know, like our years leading up to that were beautiful, and like the year we got engaged was amazing. Our marriage, the year we got married was incredible. But like we've found a lot still out about like each other and ourselves in like these last 2 years. And I think that's been really amazing. And you know, he's seen me go from, and keep in mind these last 2 years have really been when like I've my uh modeling and creator, you know, experience and all of that has grown. And so I think it actually almost benefited us more happening that way, because then I went on to like change all these things about my career, and Sam's just been like along for this ride for like a dream he never had. But you know, is like
now he's a photographer. Like
now he's like a photographer and an assistant, and like he's like taken it in total stride. But what is amazing is like, and when you know something is meant to be, is we just rolled right into it. Like, and because we're who we are as a couple and as friends, like it was like, oh yeah, this is totally natural. And like he sees how happy it makes me, and he's like, why wouldn't I support you in everything you do? And so I don't know. I just think it's a wild piece of my story that like a lot of that came after we got married. But I think I guess what I want anyone listening to know is that that's okay, and you don't have to have it all figured out. And um, it's okay to grow, like even after you're in the long-term relationship. And as long as we talk about this a lot, as long as you are growing together, like it's still, you know, that's important, of course. But you don't have to have it all figured out. Like, let me be living proof of that, because I've really bloomed after our marriage, and that was when I found out like I was really worthy of both loving myself and being loved as boldly as I am by Sam. And
that is so beautiful. My goodness. And I think that it's so beautiful to know that, because they'll just being told you don't have to have it all figured out in whatever capacity, whether it's career, whether it's relationship, whether it's self-love and being the perfect practicing self-love guru, like whatever it is. I think everybody needs that reminder as often as they can. And I think for someone, you know, if someone is currently stuck in a toxic relationship, and I think kind of as you alluded to, like in the moment you mistake it for love, and for someone that maybe even for a moment thinks maybe this isn't right, but I'm afraid of being alone. will, from your story, have hope that even if you did figure it out along the way, as we all do, that there is hope for something greater, or something different, and that you never know where things will take you. And we're so happy that it has ended up in such a positive way for you.
Thank you.
Um,
Well, and I have to touch on one thing you said, just because
Yeah.
it's like but that's something, like, both of us were actually in pretty toxic relationships prior to each other.
Oh,
And
wow.
something we've always said is, when someone asks us, like, well, why'd you stay in them so long? We both always touch on the same thought of, like, we were both more comfortable than we were happy. And I think it's really easy to, especially when you're young, to
Yep.
stay in a bad relationship or even a bad friendship, or like let yourself be walked all over by family members, whatever it is, when you are comfortable and you want to be safe.
And I would add to that, even stay in a good relationship that's just comfortable,
Yep.
but like but something is missing, or you know that there's something more. Like, I think that is like something that we see happen all the time, again, especially at this age where you're like, but I need to get married soon, like I'm 25 or whatever. Like, something can be good or comfortable, but it doesn't mean it's right still. Like, I've been thinking about that a lot. Like, what is a no and what is new, and like, what is the difference,
Yeah.
and like, how does it feel in your body? I don't know, but yeah.
No, and I love that you make that point, because you're so right. It could absolutely be like a good relationship, but still, at the end of the day, like, we lean towards playing it safe and the comfortability, because that's where we feel, like, okay, I don't have to confront anything, I don't have to deal with the bad, like, okay. But is it really what's making us happy, is, like, I think the question that's often really hard to ask.
Really hard to ask. Yeah.
It might be like, what changed your life?
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, 100%. What would you say to a woman that has this insecurity, or about like being in a bigger body than their partners or something like that? That's something that comes up a lot. We talk a lot about it with our friends. It's something that is talked about on social media. And I know it's something that you've touched on before too. And worries about, to a woman that worries about other people judging her relationship.
Absolutely. So yes, it's something I touch on a lot. It's a question that I get a lot. I get a lot of DMs about, how did you become okay with dating someone who's shorter than you? How did you become, like, well, and Sam is actually technically taller than me, but like, if you see us, like, we're close in height, like, and yeah, I've, always, even when I was actually like much smaller when I met Sam, still curvy, but like, my body has grown since then, and almost 6 years into a relationship. And it's something I've talked a lot about this last year, and something we always say together is, don't put yourself in a box. And that's what I like to say also to women specifically that you're giving this question to. Is, I think so often with dating, because of kind of like similar to the stigma that we have of like, we need to be married by 25 and like make sure that we've figured it all out, and like we're in the dream career and we're just like on the path to success, that if you're not like, if you're the cute little like petite blonde, and you're not with like the tall skinny like dark and handsome guy, well, then just like don't bother, because that's like what we see in fairy tales, and that's what like you're supposed to be with.
It's so ridiculous.
Literally, like, that's what I always felt like, is I'm like, oh, well, I'm a bigger girl, so like I'm gonna have to be with someone who can like compliment that. And what's so sickening about that like stigma is that when I think about that, I think I felt that way not because that's even what I wanted. Like,
right. That's why I like laughed. That's why my reaction was to laugh, because I was like, what?
Right. It's like, just like what I saw. I'm like, okay, well, if I'm with someone that's like even remotely like smaller than me, then that's going to be like something that people talk about, or something that people think are weird, or whatever. And here's what's really cool. That never even crossed our minds. The two of us. Like, it was never even a thing.
It doesn't actually matter.
Right. Right. And when you actually like meet the right person, it doesn't, it probably won't cross your mind, just like it did in ours, because there's so much else happening in the moment, and there's so much else that's felt and that's right, that it's like, for that to even be a thing is still kind of just, it still baffles me. But yeah, so that's why I say don't put yourself in a box, because if you walk into any potential relationship with like this idea that you need to, cross off boxes and like have a checklist of what you want, you might literally lose out on what could be the best thing in your life. And when I look back on my ex, and like my parents legitimately like still are like, you could be in this life of what was basically mapped out with my ex, and like the life I have now, which is this like beautiful, meant to be, like I feel like I'm right where I'm meant to be and with who I'm meant to be with. And but like I never would have the Bailey that I was prior to when I met Sam. Like there's a good chance that I would have been like, I maybe it's not a good fit. And I was actually the person who reached out. Like I reached out to Sam first on our dating app, but yeah, and he would honestly say the same thing. Like there were times in his past where he certainly would have just given what he had been taught and told and seen with his, friends and family, that wasn't like dating a curvy girl wasn't something that was like, the word allowed isn't right. You know what I'm saying? Like encouraged.
Like the picture.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Encouraged. It wasn't the encouraged picture perfect. Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah. And clearly it's something we're going to still like, it's still going to be a stigma we continue to shatter, because I still often like anything I post about that, just like so many opinions.
Yeah.
So many.
Totally. It's so fascinating, and also how we can really like internalize these messages. Like you said, not your desire, not what you want in a person, but like what you think you're expected to do. Like I know in my personal relationship, I've been with my boyfriend for 9 years and we're only 25. And it's beautiful and amazing. And I remember for so long, this is just based, not something I think about all the time, but when I was really, really struggling with my body image and my weight, he exists in just like a naturally like lean, fit body, and fit however we want to define it anyway. And I remember I was like, okay, well, like he's just naturally exists in this body and I don't think it's really going to change. So I guess that means I have to change mine. And I just went to the depths to change mine. And I didn't discover this about my like struggle or journey until like I actually dug deep and was like, what's a piece of why I'm doing this? And it's not because he ever made me feel like I had to. My body has changed so much over the years, and he has always stood by me and cared for me. And, I've never felt judged by his family or anyone around me because of that. But it's so fascinating how we could put that pressure on ourselves. And kind of speaking about weight gain and all of that stuff, quarantine brought a lot of unexpected struggles, but one of the most common ones that seems to be circulating with our audience, our circle of friends, is changes in our bodies. So what are your top tips for someone that logically understands that they're more than a body, but struggles with believing it and accepting their own changing body?
Yeah, I mean, that hits really hard right now, because I'm right there with, I think that's an important thing to note, is like, I'm right there with them and with all of you. Because I think often if you have a platform or, any sort of following, or like you're at the place where I'm at, people just automatically assume that like, I've just reached like this plateau of like, every day feels good. And it's like, no, like I'm right in it with you.
Yep.
Especially after this year. But I think this is gonna sound so silly, but it's a testament to how like fleeting my brain is. But will you repeat the end of your question?
Oh my gosh, of course.
No, we were talking about so much stuff. It's so difficult.
No, literally so much stuff. Basically, for someone that logically knows that they're more than a body,
Yes,
but struggles with like believing it for themselves.
right. Okay, I got you.
I said a lot.
No, we went on a journey. We went on a real journey.
Yes, it's me.
Yeah, so I think it's like one of the tips I give most often for this is doing like a major social media detox, because this is one of the toughest subjects, I think, that even you can like know this, that you're more than a body, and logically think you're surrounding yourself with people who are like positive about these types of things. But I think oftentimes there can even be like hidden triggers and messaging where we don't even see it. And so I think like sometimes I have to take a step back and be like, maybe I need to take like a little detox from this, because it's like not serving me well right now. And social media is definitely one of those things. And like this coming from someone who works in social media, like it's really important.
Yeah.
But I think one of the biggest things that helps me is actually like having a face-to-face, like it's gonna sound really silly, but a face-to-face like conversation with myself about my body. Like sometimes I genuinely will like look in the mirror and I'll like write affirmations on like either like a sticky note or like with lipstick on my mirror. Because it kind of makes it like sit with me a little deeper, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's often why I have like dance parties in my underwear, is because like in my brain,
love a dance party.
Right? And yeah, like it all sits a little deeper with me, and like, and it's gonna look different for everyone, because some of us like I love those pictures that are circulating that are like, I'm worthy, like if I feel good in less clothes, and I'm worthy and if I feel good in more clothes, like whatever, we all feel worthy in different ways. And so I think it's important when we're like on the topic of logically knowing we're more than our body. For me personally, I feel better when I'm just like dancing around the house in my underwear and a swimsuit. Like that helps me connect to like the mental state of like self-love is so much more than just my body image kind of thing. But like that might look like journaling for somebody else, or that might look like listening to a podcast to figure that out. Does that make sense? Like
Totally.
it looks different for everyone. Like that process for me personally, it's rocking out in my house in limited clothing.
Yeah.
Because that's how I just connect like the body image with the self-worth in my brain. Because for me they're pretty interconnected. But like yeah, I'm just rambling now, sorry.
No, those are they're amazing tips. And I personally love the dance party one, because I love a dance party. I just think nothing makes you feel better than like
literally nothing.
Like just getting up and dancing and like putting on your favorite music, and like nobody's there to watch you, nobody's there to judge you, like it's just you and this thing that you have, like
right. Yeah.
And like we're just lucky to be able to move it.
Mm-hmm. Truth.
But we made it here to 2021 through the quarantine, through our changing selves, through the changing bodies.
That in itself is enough. Like anyone who's sitting here, like I don't care what you do the next year, 10 years of your life, like you made it right here.
Yeah, literally like through everybody's hardest year, I think, ever. Like we made it here. It's 2021. What are some of your tips to step into the most authentic versions of ourselves this year?
You have to let go of other people's expectations. I preach this so hard on my social media, and I know it's not like, I know it's one of the most difficult things to do, but it's the best thing I ever did for myself, was like letting go of other people's expectations of how I should look, what I should be doing with my career, how I should act, how I should be, how I should be perceived, however you want to apply it. Letting go of people's expectations and opinions. When I do anything like on a daily basis, I go into it very intentionally of like, this is like, I am showing up right now and here in this moment as I am. And that to me is like as authentic as it gets, because that's like the core of how I want to be known, is like, here's me today and it looks different than yesterday, or it looks the same, or maybe it looks a little better, or maybe a little worse, but here's me on January 22nd, and like, that's what's up. So I think, like, or number one for me, yeah, letting go of other people's expectations, and also working on, let me phrase this right. Oh my goodness, I'm so caught up on my words.
No, take your time. Literally,
you have to learn to be unafraid of making other people uncomfortable, so that you can be your truest self.
Yep.
There are like a lot of family or friends of mine over the year who I may have made feel uncomfortable because I decided to be myself. And I feel like that's something that we often feel very ashamed of, or like we can't do that because we're like hurting someone in the process. Then you're never going to be true to who you are. Like, if you live that way, that's like the number one thing I've learned is.
And that's scary. It's fucking scary.
Yeah.
But like, it's worth it.
It's terrifying, but like, it's, and I still sometimes have to like dip my toe in that a little bit. And then I like realize how good it feels again. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. But yes, right. But it's so empowering. And like, you'll realize in the moment or after the fact or the next time, you know, you're like having a really kick-ass brave moment that you're like, wow, this is like the truest I've ever felt. And like, I'm living my truth, and that is worth it every time, because at the end of the day, like, you have to live with yourself and you have to be okay with the choices you make. And yeah, that's, I mean, who are we with 24 hours a day? Literally ourselves. So like, you better be damn happy with who you're spending your time with.
That is so true.
You know?
It's so true.
Bailey, you've been incredible. We have 3 quick, short questions for you. They are, do you have any daily practices, rituals, or routines that you incorporate into your days? It's okay if not.
No, totally. So just in general, my life's pretty unroutine, because it's like changing by the day. But yes, I always sit with my coffee in the morning. Something I started in 2020 that I want to get back to is I leave my phone for at least the first 30 minutes of the day. Like, I really try to aim for an hour, but and I like I want to get back to this, like reading a book, because I found that time in the morning with myself was like the most relaxed I've ever been. Yeah. Not going straight to my phone, having my coffee, and like really just trying to like figure out
it's the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Quiet morning.
So bad at that. I'm working on that.
And then self-care. You know, I'm all about self-care. Like, I always set time aside in the week to have self-care. It looks different every time. So like, come hang out with me at the Bailey P if you want to like see more of that. But yeah, that's really, really important to me, and something I definitely prioritize on different days of the week.
Love it. We always love a good face mask, a little self-care, whatever it might be. Bailey, if you no, that's not my question. My question is, has there been any resource in your life that has helped guide you through your 20s thus far? It could be a book, a podcast, a person, anything.
Yes, You Were a Badass by Jen Sincero changed my life.
Yes, such a good one.
I bought it in the airport on my way to Rome, actually, like when I had been chatting with Sam on the OkCupid app, but we hadn't met in real life. And it was actually right after I had done like a pretty intense workout program, and I was feeling, this was in like my really bad body image days, when I was feeling like I couldn't go to Rome and like indulge in all these things because I had like just worked out for like 3 weeks, and of course, like nothing was going to taste as good as skinny felt. So
wrong. Wrong. Everything. I promise everything wrong tastes better than that.
Exactly.
I swear.
Exactly. Yeah, like literally thinking about that time in my life right now, I'm like, who was she? But yeah, I remember I bought that book in the airport, and I usually like read books very sporadically. I finished that book like before I even landed in Rome. and I still reread it a couple of times a year. Like, it genuinely just changed my life, the whole outlook of, and I use that all the time. I'm like, I'm just describe myself as like a bold, bubbly badass, and I owe a lot of that to that book.
Love it.
That is incredible. Love it, love it. And our last question is normally, where can people find you? But if you want to jump into that, I know you mentioned it before.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the Bailey P is where you can find me on Instagram. That's also my website is thebaileyp.com. I talk a lot more about like my journey into modeling there. I have a Q&A section, all sorts of resources that are questions that I get like most frequently via Instagram. Yeah, so come say hey, come hang out. I'm so glad I got to do this with y'all.
Yes, this was so fun. Oh, Bailey, we cannot thank you enough. This was so amazing.
Oh, and if you're ever in Redondo Beach and see me around, please say hi.
Yes, say hi to Bailey. She obviously is a ball of bubbles. She's so much fun. Go follow her on Instagram. And Bailey, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You.
Stay warm out there on the East Coast.
Yes, thank you.
We'll talk to y'all soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.